Welcome to the Gray Area. The Gray Area Media. We've obligated ourselves to be the voice for all communities, speaking on topics that include community, religion, education, politics, technology, sports, health, and wellness. The Gray Area Media is a platform created by longtime friends for the sole purpose of providing our communities with the ability to voice current, past, and modern-day issues. The Gray Area, in its naming significance, solely speaks to the area in which people shy away from speaking because of media-based constraints or contractual-based obligations. Well, I'm here to tell you, we don't do that here. So please, stay tuned in. We're going to go live in a few minutes. Don't forget, please add us as a friend on Facebook so that you can follow our live feed. And not only that, please add us on Twitter and Instagram at The Gray Area Media. Please visit our website at www.thegrayareamedialive.com. Thank you. Hello, viewers. We are live right now. This is Facebook, and this is your boy Ray E.
This is your boy P. Wills.
And this is Ebony.
And this is Ebony.
Why did I say that wrong?
I know, man.
This is Facebook. I usually say this is the Gray Area.
Yeah.
Y'all, this is the Gray Area, and we're live on Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, that's that boomerang or going around in here, man.
Oh, my goodness. P. Wills in the building, y'all.
What's happening? What's happening?
Give it up for Patford.
Rayford over here. but you know, Ebony. This EB or Ebony.
Ray's starting to
No,
Ray.
no, don't do it.
Ray's starting to R&B company.
Don't do it. I'm about to mute your mic.
Yeah, man. Oh, man, say it. What'd you say? Sweet, nasty 90s music
God.
records.
Nasty Ray's 90s R&B records.
Y'all hear this?
Nasty Nelson got to be in there somewhere.
This is not how we're supposed to open.
Right. We're talking about schools, education.
Yeah.
All right.
Get serious.
We have some
Gang
special
face on.
guests here for y'all that have been here before. We introduced them earlier in the year. Rick Anderson and Robert Marshall, with their individual schools that are being released in 2018, right? Allegiant Preparatory and Vanguard Collegiate of Indianapolis. Tell us what's been going on with you guys, man. Tell us. Grinding.
I mean, do I need to make a beat on that? Boom, boom, boom,
You guys have been enrolling people like crazy. So I mean, it ain't even the end of the year yet.
Yeah. I would say, building the village. So we talk about, it takes a village. It's kind of a mantra, but literally it's the sweat equity and just building the village. So everything between, having a community discussion or ice cream social at at an apartment complex to speaking with a director at an early child care education center to try to align ourselves with other organizations that are having events that are geared towards parents to kind of spread the news about the school and also get feedback from families.
Right.
Looking for a facility, building curriculum, starting to hire staff, so the full gamut.
Absolutely.
Indeed, that's all that's happening. Rick's absolutely right. Everything from volunteering and read up in some of the schools over in the area. We've been spending a lot of time going door to door, actually meeting neighbors, and whether they have kids or not, just wanting to share the mission and the vision of the school to make sure that they're aware.
Okay.
Specifically for Vanguard, that is a school that is trying to be do something with that community as opposed to something to a community.
Yeah.
Right.
And we need their buy-in, whether they have children or not. So, as you said, building that village, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, look, man, you touched on sweat equity, right?
Yes, sir.
Can you please define that? Because, I think that's really important for people to, understand what that means and why that is so important if you're trying to do anything.
Yeah, I think when you talk about building or founding anything, but obviously something that's as important as developing, the future leaders of this city, the country, etc. A lot of times in startup, 'cause just like anyone that starts a company up, You have to look for capital. You have to look for a physical place to do business. You have to create the systems and operational pieces that will kind of sustain the program. Investing people, because to be honest, it's just you. It's the T-shirt that you wear. It's the piece of paper. So there's a piece of it where people have to buy in with you as the individual. And a lot of times, I remember one time I was over near the Hallville Library working, and I just so happened to kind of be pop-up canvassing. So if a meeting, in between meetings, so I'll give you a practical example. I'm doing work out of the Hallville Library. A meeting gets canceled, so I just go out and I start canvassing in the neighborhood. And there was a woman who was sitting on a porch, and I remember she was telling me in terms of how do you build equity, with the community? How do you invest the community? And she was just like, we need to see your face. So what happens is, even though the school starts in the 18-19 school year respectively, a lot of times what I talk with families is, you have an opportunity for us each month. We're having events where we can talk about specifically what rigorous academics are. We can talk about specifically what our character development program looks like. We can talk about community asset building. We can talk about what orientation for students looks like and how we can differentiate our program from other programs. Again, with respect, not talking negatively about any other charter or public. It's more talking about, hey, this is what we are. This is what we stand for, and over the course of the next 6 or 7 months, you have multiple opportunities to come out and learn more about the school. Versus, I remember last August when we started the fellowship, and I've been working at a church near 14th and King, helping with the food pantry, helping with the early literacy program in the summer. And the only thing that I saw from one of the district schools between last August and now in terms of engaging the community was a week or two before school, a piece of paper that said come and enroll. So that's different when really our touch point is just kind of coming in and enrolling 2 weeks before school, versus you have a full month to learn what our why is. Are we aligned with that? Where there's kind of disconnect, and also getting feedback. So I think it's more of an intimate relationship. And starting at a smaller school level where it's a high level of trust and responsibility, not just like I'm just waiting for you to come.
Looking back before, when you guys started the vision, wrote it down, have you had that moment now, present tense, that I guess that moment where you said, this is a lot more than what I thought it was going to be?
I think probably several times over, especially as when you have a vision like that, you have different iterations, right? Because as you grow as a leader and as a founder, so too does your vision for your school. And as we both completed residencies in Milwaukee in August. We were there for 5 weeks, and we learned a lot about operations. And so how that fits into the mold has shifted and changed. And so I think for me anyway, I've had that moment several times over. But I think the thing that's really stood out to me in terms of the progression was when, even before we started the fellowship, I was doing a lot of research for my previous post about community need. And man, as more data starts to come out, I think the thing that's really kept me grounded, provided some levity for the whole situation, is that the need just keeps growing. And so what we have to offer, the vision we have for these respective schools, there's an absolute need specifically in the Hallville area for it. So.
What kind of stuff are you seeing? Both of you guys seeing it. I mean, in the data that that fuels you guys to keep doing this and to push forward, because a lot of people don't know that. I mean, you hear stuff, read stuff in the paper, or hear stuff on the news, but really a lot of people don't understand what's going on with the charter school thing. They know that a lot of IPS schools are closing and a lot of charter schools are popping up. What can you guys say to give them confidence in this kind of charter school, in these kind of charter schools?
I guess I would start from, there's quantitative or empirical evidence, and then there's qualitative. So the empirical, when I was in Memphis the last 5.5 years as a teacher and then a school leader, when I've always wanted to come back to Indianapolis personally and professionally, and when I looked, I was like, well, the area of town in which we were kind of targeting, the west side, when you look at data, the Indiana Department of Education provides you with information on how schools perform each year, year after year, savvy data, based on the database. I think IU gives you demographic information on how many individuals over the age of 25 have college degrees. So I could go into that, but that's kind of out there. I think the biggest piece that kind of started painting the picture to the need as we started canvassing and speaking with families, the top 2 or 3 things that I typically hear, a lot of times an individual's perception of an institutional organization, even if it's a school, is based on one, what their experience and interaction was with it, right? So if I went to that school and had a bad experience as an adult, that may be one, right? And then if I have children that have been to that school and have had bad experiences, then I carry that, and then that can be generalized for all schools, be it public, traditional, or charter. I'd say a lot of times the misinformation, I remember it clear as day. I was sitting and speaking to a woman on her porch. She had it was the first actual intent to enroll form that I received for the school. So obviously I'm excited, right? Like, man, somebody believe it. I don't even have a building, and you're going to sign this form? Like, that's kind of, it's crazy to an extent, right? And I could tell there was a glaze over look in her eyes as I was getting into the school, and I just stopped and I said, do you know what a charter school is? And she was just like, no. No good or bad perception. Like, no. So I went into autonomy and accountability. I didn't really touched on the innovation a little bit in traditional, but I was really just saying, hey, this is what makes us unique outside of Allegiant Prep, and what I believe is going to be what makes this kind of the special recipe or sauce for your child to access upper mobility in college and life. This is just what a charter school is. So that was kind of, it's almost like layering the conversation. Once again, it goes back to having multiple touch points to talk about, this is what a charter school is, right? Then this is what Allegiant Prep is. This is what our culture is. So I don't think it can be had in just one kind of conversation because the level of misinformation or ignorance or all of that is so kind of deeply entrenched. So that's been my experience, the face-to-face. My experience in a school, good or bad, projects what I think about a traditional or public, or the experience one of my children that may be older has had, and that's what you are, right? So then it's from there not being combative, but just saying, hey, I hear you. This is what makes us different. This is also respectfully where you could have some pieces that aren't as clear. So that's been the conversation, I guess, is where the most fruit has been bared.
Yeah.
Robert.
No, he's absolutely right. I spoke at on a panel about a month or two ago, and we talked a lot about trauma-informed care. It's the new buzzword. But essentially, for students, it is paying attention to situations that they may have, or experiences they may have had that have caused trauma, which hinder their ability to learn. Right? And that's the approach. And so one of the things that we talked about on the panel is how do we take a trauma-informed care approach to the way we interact with parents. Understanding that
that's good.
They haven't always had the best experiences.
When you speak of trauma, you're talking about like, PTSD or just experiences growing up that
sometimes I use my family as an example, right? So I'm the first of my siblings to graduate from high school, first generation college graduate. And when I had a conversation a couple years ago with my sister, who dropped out probably about sophomore, junior year of high school. She had terrible experiences, right? She was getting bullied, and it's funny because she is a bully, right? This is like our family inside joke. But she was getting bullied. She was, essentially getting ignored by teachers and administrators with regards to her challenges academically. And so all of that impacted the way that she approached school. So when she had her own son who got into high school, you got a few different issues, right? So now he's in higher level math. I can't even begin to help you because I never made it that far. I never had that class. So when you bring this algebra to me, it's Greek, right? So that's the first thing. But the other thing is when you run into situations, I'm slow to go to the school and advocate for you because I remember what that experience was for me as a student, and I don't want to feel that again. And so how do you as an administrator build a school culture that is open, that's welcoming, and pays attention to not just your students' need, because that is your first and foremost priority, but understanding that this is a partnership, right? And so you need the parents, and so how are you paying attention to some of their needs in order to best serve that student?
For sure.
That's beautiful.
That makes sense. Now, a lot of you guys are you both are in urban areas where where the schools are either closing or what?
In Hallville, man.
Okay.
So you're both in Hallville?
Both headed to Hallville.
You guys are both in Hallville, so you know that the predominant group of people that you're going to get are black kids. Now, the thing is, and we talked about this last time, is that, black kids sometimes have a hard time learning in environments that don't seem welcoming to them. And you touched on it a little bit about, making it welcoming. what kind of things are you guys doing to promote their culture, so that they feel welcome? Because a lot of times in schools, you don't get anything until you get to history class, and then they go over like the slave stuff. That's when you really start finding out, like, oh, we used to be slaves. But there is so much more ingrained in who we are as a culture,
Right.
and oftentimes black kids don't feel like they have a place. And we have to adapt to these other educational systems. What kind of things are you guys doing to help our kids love their culture and embrace education?
So I think obviously the importance of enculturating not just black kids that are living in the inner city, but in general, anytime you're entering, so especially thinking about where I'm starting with kindergarten and first grade, a lot of times, and in Indiana, I didn't realize this being from here, that you don't even have to go to kindergarten, you can just start in first grade.
Right.
So a lot of times, if you've just been sitting in the living room or at a pre-K or whatever it may be, there's kind of a level of enculturation to, this is how we conduct ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Right.
We say, we sometimes, I remember when I was younger, it could be looked at as a sign of defiance or disrespect if you made eye contact with someone. So I've had to break that with kindergarten and first grade students sometimes.
Right.
Like, no, we're showing respect by making eye contact. It's not cool or being slighted, and we do that every single day when you cross the threshold into the school.
Right.
The other piece is really unity is one of our core values. I am because we are.
Right.
I think specifically with the black community, I'd say your Langston Hughes or your Booker T. Washington group of individuals, whichever you want to say, that crab in the barrel mentality is very real, and it's scary when you start to see it in kindergarten and first grade.
Right.
So we have a full week of orientation, and this is not just limited to this week, but then we kind of cultivate it beyond that, where students come in and we learn what respect is, what responsibility is, what integrity is. If someone makes a mistake and starts snickering, right, we stop and we say, hey, we don't snicker.
Right.
Instead, we do the Arsenio Hall.
Right.
So when someone's struggling, you actually see students that are trained in orientation to start doing this. And by the end, they're not even doing it. We don't explicitly show it to them. Teachers are just doing it. If someone stands up and says their full name in front of 120 students, right, and says, I am Rick Anderson, I'm a part of Tuskegee, and I'm going to graduate in 2030. That's huge for a kindergartner.
Absolutely.
In school, right? So what we're trying to do in terms of with our students, and I know Robert is, we'll talk about the same, is really enculturating them around supporting black people, not just you going to college, but the person in front of you, behind you, on your left and on your right. There's other ways in which also that we incorporate cultural nuances in the way that we celebrate people. You go, boy, you go, girl, after you provide evidence to answer a question, right? So I think one probably is just based on us, being African American males. It's probably a piece of it that can't be articulated just based on our socialization that we implicitly, systematize into the culture of the school and the training for teachers that may not even reflect the students to be culturally aware. But the other piece is just being very intentional around building community, even when we make mistakes or even when someone's awkward or off. We celebrate that and embrace it. We don't kind of shun or make fun of it. So try to provide
for sure.
In terms of culture, I think there's three things I want to touch on. I'll try to be as brief as possible.
Sure.
But one, I think it's about how culture happens before student steps foot in the building.
Okay.
It's about the appropriate training and the efficacy of your staff. And then I think the third thing
That's
is
big. Training the staff, because a lot of times, and I hate to stop you, but a lot of times you have teachers who have never had culture training in regards to the systems that they were being placed in.
And they're stuck in one way,
and they get frustrated in those systems, especially predominantly, black schools.
And they come with their own implicit biases that you're trying to
see. You touched on one of the points I was about to
get.
Right. So go ahead.
The last thing was just I want to touch briefly on some of the things that we do about in culture in the school. But so the first thing is really about what are the touch points that you have with the family. I think Rick touched on it a little bit prior to school starting. I think one of the major touch points that you have is when a student enrolls in your school, going to every home, sitting down at that coffee table or at that kitchen table, and having that agreement that says, hey, here are the things that you can expect from Vanguard Collegiate, but as a parent, here are the things that I expect of you, and then student, here are the things I expect of you. So nobody's surprised day one, because we all have at least a baseline understanding of
Right.
what the expectations are of one another, what the culture is going to be like. We've had this conversation multiple times over, but that's the key thing. When we talk about the training and efficacy of your staff, for me, I think one thing that's just critically important is having staff that look like or have experiences that our students have. Right. So for me, as school leader, I am our students.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes people hear that I went to Rebuff, they create a narrative of who I am.
Right.
I'm sure my boy Brandon Oakley's out there. He can attest to this. Growing up over on 37th Street.
Shout out to Brandon.
Yeah, over across town, spending time in the meadows. Like the situations, the adult situations that our students are being put into. That's what I grew up with, right? And so I get that, I understand that, and that impacts the way that I interact with our students.
Right.
And it should the same for our teachers. And so
Right.
we have a few teachers that have signed what we call an intent to work with our school, and they look like our students. And so that was critically important for me to find those. And so you talked about implicit bias training, and it's something that as part of our final assignment for our fellowship, we had to develop our summer professional development plan for our schools. You see Rick over your side. But part of my plan is the implicit bias training, because it's so important. As you mentioned, especially for those, even if they are white or if they are of color, they may not have had the same experience.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And so we have our own biases about
We
people
sure
that
do.
grew up in different sides of town and went to different schools. And so it's going to be crucial, and hopefully my guy Brandon Randall's going to help me out with that.
For sure, for
Probably
sure.
watching somewhere right now.
Yeah. And we want to be clear that we're not judgmental or pointing anybody out. We simply understand that there is some biases that even individuals don't know that they have working in certain systems. So it's important for schools to have a program that helps with engagement. So a predominantly black school may need a program that helps white kids who are the minority in the school engage with black kids. I mean, it goes back. It goes vice versa. It's not just a one-sided thing. You should have a program for that.
For sure. So last thing is just one thing that's just crucial to our school culture is we are unapologetically college prep.
For sure.
And so that plays itself out in a number of ways.
What age group?
I'm working with 5th through 8th graders.
5th through 8th grade. Okay.
Unfortunately, some of the things that Rick mentioned about enculturating students to what school is like, I'm still going to have to do in 5th grade. And that's part of why our school is designed the way that it is. We have a lower academy and upper academy. 5th and 6th grade being lower academy, 7th and 8th graders being upper academy. Lower academy really is about building foundational skills, right? Understanding that those students are coming in 2, 3, 4 years behind grade level ELA and math, and so there's work to do. And so a big part of that is how do you establish a strong culture that says, I get it, you're 3 years behind. Not only are we going to get you there, but you're going to walk out of here with a plan to go to college. And so every classroom is named after a college or university. So, of course, you see my colors, you see the school colors. I'm a Morehouse man. So, of course, Morehouse is going to be one of those cohorts as an example. And so for
is that going to be the class that gets all the treats and goodies and
special
attention?
I would never do that.
That bias.
Too funny.
So your colleges like represent HBCUs?
So not all of them.
Okay.
Some of them will. So there'll be HBCUs. There'll be Ivy League schools.
Good. They give options.
I'm a huge proponent of students. I mean, I don't support the brain drain, but I'm a huge proponent of students getting experiences outside of the state of Indiana, because I really feel like it just opens up a student's perspective.
Right.
And so, to that point, one of the things as part of our school design is working with the program Bloom Project.
Absolutely. Shout out to the Bloom Project. Brandon Randall, Arnetta Scruggs.
To provide some college tours for our students, because you got to see it.
Right.
For me,
they're
being
working
first generation,
with
I
some
had
good
to
kids,
see
man.
Morehouse before I was like, oh, this is where I need to be. And so providing the same experience for our students. So.
Right.
And I was going to say, with the college tours, it's the same way, starting with kindergarten and first, but also for those days not having class in school, and also inviting the families to go with us to the universities. Because a lot of times it's not just the student that needs to see it, it's the mom or dad.
For sure.
What I've seen is that sometimes the student may have a lot of responsibility for the family, and actually them leaving can be counter to how they can. So they need to start seeing that really, really early.
Right.
The other piece, as you guys know, I like practical examples, and I like to break things apart. So when we talk about a college prep school, going back to those individual family meetings we make it very clear and give examples. So in those meetings, we talk about, this is a college prep school. We don't have homework, we have life work, and it's every single evening. The reason why we call it life work is because we're not just preparing your child to be successful in school, it's in life.
Right.
And then I give examples. So in school, what mom and dad, what else do they do outside of just school? It could be church, it could be soccer, it could be this, right? Great. Once they get to high school, I'll articulate. It could be being in school, student government. It could be a part-time job. Once they go to college, it could be a group project. It could be a paper. It could be on-campus study. It could be a fraternity or sorority.
Sure.
They're always going to have multiple different things that they have to do. So we're preparing them for life, because sometimes you get pushback and say, well, why do they have to have homework every single night? I don't agree with that. Or it may not come out. You have to look for verbal cues. And in those meetings, while we're in this intimate space and building a relationship, you push in respectfully. Mom or dad, I see that when I say they have homework every night, that you kind of twitch. Do you and it may come out, I don't understand that, or why, and you give that explanation. So once we get into the school again, the village, the student, the school, and the student, the family, and the school are all on the same page, versus that coming out 2 months from now. I don't understand why we have. So a lot of it is just that proactive communication and being bold enough or brave enough to say, hey, while I'm building a relationship, hey, you didn't seem, did you understand that? I just want to make sure we're clear. Not, did you get that? That's the expectation. That's a different tone. Did you get that? I just want to make sure we're clear, because it's very critical for them being successful.
For sure.
The last piece, an example with teachers of color sometime, and also teachers that may not be of color, and it's something around training, we have to also, if we want our children to be vulnerable, to take chances and take risks, we have to, as the leader, be vulnerable in front of them. Prime example you see all the time, sometimes with newer teachers or younger teachers, or people that just aren't as confident, they'll make a mistake in front of a student. It could be easy. Like you're working on the clock and you just, it's 2:30, no, it's 2:15. And the teacher's like, no, that's not right. And the thing is, like, you're undermining my authority even if I'm wrong. Instead, what we do is we intentionally, once we are in lessons sometimes, or reading the math, and I say we now, speaking from my past experiences to be the same at Legion Prep, I'll make a mistake in front of students. 2 + 2 is 3. Are all the students just gonna, is it power, or is someone gonna yell, no, that's wrong, right? Or is it, Mr. Anderson, actually 2 + 2 is 4. So how is the tone, and were you brave enough to correct, right?
That's interesting, man.
So it gets, so I like to give those specific examples, even when we're talking to families in those kind of meetings. So when I say college prep, when I say high expectations, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right. That's good. Parent engagement is a big deal, right? Some schools, some charter schools may see, for one, the kids don't have, there's no busing, okay? That's one thing. You got to make sure the kid get to the school, okay? So that's parent engagement. Now you have life work. Let's just use as an example that you have to sit and do with kids every night. I'm a prime example of, like, when my kid comes home, I ask him about homework, and then I ask him what he got going on, and then I engage with him with that. I've been a prime example over the 4 years working with my son and his progression in having parent engagement. I strongly advise people to have, like, be involved in their kids' schoolwork, because it gives them confidence. It makes them think about at school, like, what they're going to interact with, how they're going to interact with you when they get home. They're going to have to answer some questions in regards to how the school day went. I mean, you're giving them a responsibility, and my son has did a resilient job at doing that. He is now an A and B student. And I mean, and he maintains that. He just made the basketball team, and I mean, he's just doing phenomenal, man. And I just love him to death, because he was a kid that was.
No, I'm clapping for everything.
You don't clap. You had no A's and B's.
You're right, Pat.
No, I got an A's and B's. Yeah, you ain't lying either.
I had to get it.
Trying to put my man Pat in the Bible.
I had to get it.
It's all good though.
But he is resilient now. It's all good. No, but you know, his progression was crazy, because he couldn't count money in the 3rd grade. You know what I'm saying? And now he is like, people asking him for help, and that's big. But that just showed me, like, how important parent engagement is. So can you guys speak on how you guys are interacting with the parents, and what are you tasking parents with in regards to having their kids at school?
I had this situation where I was, we were going door to door canvassing, and I came up on a house and I got emotional, man. It took him a little minute to open the door. It was a hot day, but I had the door open, so I could see in. Man, and this single parent, this mother, had her 3 boys, and these were big boys. One was in high school, one was in middle school, one was in elementary school. Man, they were all doing homework at the table.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I got emotional because I'm like, man, that
That's
just
right.
doesn't
You don't see that happen.
Right.
Yeah.
that often. And as we were talking, I told her, like, she's the type of parent that we need at Vanguard Collegiate.
Sure.
Because a parent with that kind of zeal and that type of desire for their students' success,
Absolutely.
and that type of discipline,
Yeah.
to make that happen for their sons in that regard,
Sure.
it was absolutely phenomenal. Those are the kind of parents that we definitely want to engage. Big part of Vanguard Collegiate is we're going to engage with families no matter where they are. We're going to meet
But they
them
need to
at
become
their
mentally
needs.
ready for
Exactly.
for that engagement.
Exactly. That's a big part of it. So one of the things that we'll do, we have a lot of things, but I think one thing I wanted to stick on is we will have Parent University.
Okay.
And so once a month, there are these sessions, and I've seen them done in other schools where, they have the ice cream social, and they say, hey, iStep's coming up here for 10 steps to make sure that your student's successful on iStep.
Sure.
You got 500 parents in the school, 15 show up to your ice cream social. I think the challenge is finding those parent university sessions that we know are pertinent and important to parents, right? These are topics that mean something to them. And so one of the examples is, how do we get our parents to be like the lady that I ran into?
That was going to be my question.
And so having a teacher actually lead a session, right, where she's bring your students to this parent night, so that we can show you how we help them with homework, and we have these step by step. It's written out for you so that you can understand how it's supposed to be done.
Right.
A lot of parents will show up to that because, again, we talked a little bit earlier about that trauma, right? I want to help my student. I'm just not sure how. And so what if we have Parent University that shows you how to engage with your student, how to help them interact with the homework. But over and above that, we're also showing you how to connect with us if you're having some challenges doing that in a way that is non-threatening, right? It's non-judgmental, because our end game is the same as yours. We want to see your child successful off to college and doing amazing things, transforming in the community. That's how we get there. And so those parent university sessions are going to be a huge part of how we engage parents. The other thing is, Rick kind of touched on it earlier, how do we engage them in the fun stuff too?
Sure.
When I was at CLD, probably the most fun that parents had in some of our sessions was when we brought them to some of the fun stuff, i.e. the college tour to Notre Dame, where we showed over 500 black families.
Wow.
Bus after bus
Notre
after
Dame?
bus to Notre Dame. It was absolutely amazing thing to witness. But the parents had the most fun. And so making sure that we're not just engaging them on the things that are the serious business, but we're also engaging them on the things that are a little bit more lighter, that keep them kind of connected to school, because that's how you build community, right? It's not always one way, and so keeping them connected to our community. So.
Absolutely.
You can't, I agree with everything Robert's said. You can't impose or present an expectation without equipping someone. So while I would assume everyone in this room and Robert's mom and my mom, they had a certain level of expectation for us that trumped any kind of school, right? So it didn't matter if I wasn't, if someone wasn't pushing me. There was an expectation when I left home and when I got home that I was going to do my homework. I was an average student, in high school, but still, I was going to. There was a certain level of expectation that was placed upon me in the household. We can't always. We know that expectation isn't created equal for every student that's going to arrive each single day, right? But then we can't assume that well, that parent's just lazy. They're just right. So that the assumption and the mindset is one piece too. So when they come in the university nights, which we'll have, but also in those family meetings, we go over those very, very practical things. This is like literally, here's the packet for life work. Here's Monday. Here's Tuesday. Here's where the student's behavior will be. Here's where the notes from the teacher will be. Here's where sight words will be. Here where there's 30 minutes of reading, and here's the actual comprehension question. questions that you need to ask that are aligned to the questions we're asking.
Right.
And then does that make sense? Are you? And then the university nights are kind of washing and repeat and rinse throughout the school year. The last thing also, which is real, and I'm going to be real, I've been in some second and third grade classes in terms of the way some of these standards are being taught nowadays, and I'm sorry, I want to look at you, Ebony, but it's holding me over here too. Yeah, you'll go in and scratch your head and be like, I don't know how to do this. So it's frustration, right? And also, if you think about literacy, if I'm a parent, I don't know how to read.
Right.
I'm not gonna come and be like, man, well, I don't know how to read, right? I can feel it, and that's when you have to keep it real too.
Right.
Do you really need some help? But if you have that relationship and know it's from a non-judgmental point, so you kind of have to peel back the onion on some extreme cases to get to that. So it's not just something that happens.
That was going to be one of my questions for you, is that there are literally parents who had no education. You know, somehow they were able to get decent jobs and use their experience to move along, but they didn't learn math or English or any of these other things. So you send them home with homework, and the kid looking at them, and they looking at the kid like, what do you want me to do?
So one thing, two things with that. One, part of the way our school day is designed, the last class of every day, Monday through Friday, is a tutoring session, right?
Oh, that's good.
And so it's an opportunity for students to get that additional support
Right,
that they may need. How we decide who goes to what session is based upon what we call exit tickets. So essentially at the end of every class, you take a short quiz, 3-5 questions, to make sure that you got the objectives of the day, right? And so Ray may be a math dynamo, but for whatever reason today, fractions just kicked his butt. He needs some additional support. And so you took that exit ticket in third period. Well, we know by the end of the day, guess where you're headed? You're going to get the additional math support. And so it's almost like real-time assistance and support. And so when I say that it's a school that's built around supporting every student, that's one of the ways that we're able to support students immediately at their specific needs.
So I'm sorry. No. Finish, please.
The other thing was just around how do we continue to build support for families. One of the things that we are working on right now, we have a staff member that's part of her job, is to build this, I don't want to call it a Bible, but essentially it will be, it's all community resources. So if Patrick comes in as a parent and says, look, man, you've been on me about these uniform shoes, I really just can't afford
design and lesson planning. So that's, I think, the third piece. And then the fourth piece is the ongoing support now that we're officially out of the fellowship in terms of having feedback. And that's one thing that applies, and I'm going to pivot out of this question to go to something that Robert said about how he created a system or a manual for this is where we can go when we need this for a family. Right. The other piece is keeping your ear to your rail, and your staff and teachers have to be in a place where they know we block off time for you to present feedback on what you're seeing beyond just the day-to-day. Right? So there's a trend, if we're sitting and having professional development every Friday and 4 or 5 teachers, right, say that we're having issues with 80% of our class doing life work, right? So we need to stop and have a conversation around how can we address this? Is it something that we need to equip students with? Is it something we need to equip families with? So I think there has to be a safe space created between, I call everyone leaders in the building because you're leading on an administrative level or you're leading the classroom, but sometimes there can be a level of fear in terms of feedback to give this to the leader, right? When we need that because we can't see all and be all things. True. So I think that's the other piece around feedback that applies on the school setting with the dynamic between the teacher and the leader, and also the BES kind of still, or the fellowship still provides us as we grow to develop, great schools.
Okay. I just want to apologize to the viewers. Somehow we lost sound in our microphones, so you guys are listening to us on our backup microphone. So if you still have trouble hearing us, just let us know. We apologize for that, but we'll figure that out. For now, we'll just use our backup sound. If you guys can hear us, just let us know.
I had another question. So since the fellowship, it sounds like your fellowship, I don't know if different fellowships work differently for different people, but it sounds like your fellowship has fully equipped you to run a charter school, or to run a school, period, successfully. Absolutely. Everything that you said is like, wow, that's what we're missing right now. Yeah. So it sounds like they put a lot of research, they put a lot of just thought into what they want this school to look like, match with your vision and where we're going in the 21st century. And so I'm wondering, though, why do charter schools fail? Because based on the leadership, when these fellowships are preparing you all so well and thorough, or is it that some of them don't?
So I have 2 things, but I'll let you.
Go ahead.
So again, that is that's the $1 million. Why do schools just fail in general, right? Yeah, but specifically in terms of so let me again give context. Before Allegiant Prep, for the last 5.5 years, I taught first grade for 2 years at an urban high-performing charter school in Memphis. Okay. The school leaders of these 2 schools I served at did the same exact fellowship that I just completed. Okay. So I think my background knowledge was pretty it was strong, right, in terms of like what this should look like in terms of a high-performing school. And then I moved to a middle school, taught 6th grade social studies, and then was a school leader for the last 3 years at high-performing urban charter schools. During that time, and then also going in the fellowship and now being out, the 2 biggest reasons why I'd say schools fail in general for one of them, and then specifically for the second, charters. One is just this work is really, really hard and it's demanding. So you obviously you can't sustain an excellent program if every other year it's a new school leader, right? And some of that is, man, I'm just tired, or I'm just tired of failing, right? Like because we're our biggest critics, right? So if the needle isn't moving in your mind enough, you just get bogged down by the challenge of it all, or life. If someone had a baby, I have to move. If someone got sick, so that we're not immune to those things that happen with people in other professions. So just the revolving door in leadership, it's hard to sustain a program. Sorry, little spit came out. Got hired. That's why I remember. Hey, can I step out for a second? I was just telling. I was telling a story earlier when I was in Memphis, and I used to teach 6th grade social studies. I would come in so hyped, like the hook before the class starts. Like we're talking about ancient Mesopotamia, and I come in like ready, like good morning, fam. I'd have them fired up and all that. And I always used to stand in the front. Right. And there was this girl at how the tables where there were 2 of them that sat here, and I would be really, really hyped, like hyped. So I used to sometimes spit, and she would and she wasn't feeling it. That wasn't cool, right? Fast forward, she's in 8th grade, and I'm the principal at the K through 5, and I'm just coming up to, when it's always good to see, like, oh, those are my 6th graders, now they're 8th graders. And she used to have this funky attitude with me all the time, right? So I really had to ask her peers. I was like, why is this young lady always mad at her? Like, for real, Mr. Anderson, you want us to tell? I was like, yeah. They're like, you used to spit on her face in 6th grade. I was like, really? You're holding on to this? So I just thought about that. But she used to give me the nastiest attitude in 8th grade. Sorry, but anyway, going back, and the second piece, I think, is sometimes a small amount of success or even mediocrity can be rewarded with, like, because think about it, if we open a school in a neighborhood where only 50% of the high school students are going to graduate. You have K through 8 schools that only less than half of them are able to pass the 3rd grade I read. If I come in and I'm 70%, right? It's like, oh man, we're going to give you X amount of dollars, but guess what? You got to replicate this thing. So like your plan, you're not even 2025 is when you reach 8th grade, but guess what? We need you to open up another school and then another school, so you almost become a victim of money that you may be given because the powers that be, whoever it is, right, a foundation wants you to accelerate to have a larger impact, but you haven't codified your systems enough, right, and it actually ends up doing a disservice to the school and ultimately the families and students. So those are the two pieces, the revolving door of leadership and growing too fast when you're not ready.
I would definitely say that the revolving door, but I would probably even say the revolving door with teachers as well. There's just
a lot of turnover.
The biggest challenge to a student's academic success is consistency. If you don't have any consistency or continuity in your education program, you're going to be challenged, right?
I'm going to talk a little louder.
I'm sorry. Okay. Yep. So you're going to be challenged if you don't have that consistency or continuity. I think that's a really big one. And then the second thing, excuse me, Rick hit on about replication, and I think that lure of replication and money can be big for individuals that are connected to some of those entities that support that kind of thing. But I think more so for some of the smaller ones that may not be as connected, it's a lack of connection to the community, right? Because the bottom line for every school is, doesn't matter whether you're public, private, charter, if students don't come to your school, you don't have a school. And so how you do that is being connected to a community and getting some buy-in and support from that community. And if you don't do that work on the front end before your doors open, you talk about an uphill battle and being almost impossible once you open your doors, unless you are just really knocking it out of the park, right? And then the last thing is just, we talked a lot about, Rick talked a lot about the visits to a lot of, and the study that we've done of some of the highest performing charter schools across the country. A lot of leaders get caught up with ego and I, and they don't replicate with fidelity. When you see something that's working, right? I got to put my spin on Iverson's crossover. Iverson's crossover was working. It didn't need Ray's touch on that. It
need my crossover behind that.
It didn't need that.
No, I don't need that crossover.
I threw that out there just for you, Pete Will.
You got me one.
But yeah, that's a big thing.
Mike could use that 3 though.
But that's a big thing. Just replicating the things that work with fidelity. Sticking with it.
Wow, this is incredible, man. So, community engagement. So, I mean, I think that's big in the communities that you're in. Oftentimes, charter schools get in some communities and they're just in that community as a school. You know, they don't engage necessarily with the surrounding, the people that live in the area. So, you're not going to get support from people in the area if they don't, engage with them. So, what kind of things are you guys doing in these areas to continue to stay engaged with the community where the kids are living? I feel like if they see y'all outside of the school, whether that be in the summertime or year round, then you're going to get them in the fall.
And especially those people that you said that don't have children that are going to the school, getting them invested into your vision and what's going on.
One of the things that we did, we were really intentional about it. We added an individual that actually lives in the neighborhood to our school board.
Oh, that's great.
To our school board.
What was the purpose of that? I mean, how did you pick that individual?
So he's actually a really strong community advocate already.
Uncle Otis?
No, it's not Uncle Otis. He's on his way. Sabeko, Jawanza.
I was just about to ask you the name drop. That's awesome.
Shout out
to Sabeko.
And so he's a strong community advocate. You all know him well. But he lives in the halls of the community. And you know, he has what he refers to as church, where guys come, young, old, sit on the porch.
Sure.
And so he's really connected to that neighborhood, and so that was really important for us long term, just thinking strategically.
Sure.
And one of our goals is to always have someone from that community as part of our leadership team in some sort of fashion. The other thing is getting in there and volunteering. We talked a lot about the canvassing piece, which is an absolute necessity, but the volunteering. So I mentioned Read Up earlier, so being in the schools with Read Up, and so if those of you don't know, it's a program where through United Way that is teaching literacy to 3rd and 4th graders, specifically students who are at risk of not passing either the iRead or the iStep exam, and essentially is what's referred to in education as guided reading class. And so one of the things I did over the summer, man, I went to Christamore House. See, I got Read Up, put me in there, coach. You know, and I got my 2 little guys, and before I knew it, at the end of the summer, I had 4 guys.
Sure.
And we were reading away all summer long. And so taking small steps like that to make sure that we're volunteering, we're involved. Both of us serve on a number of committees and boards. So tomorrow we have the West Side Education Task Force, which is a group that is working with the Quality of Life Plan for the Hallville area.
Okay.
Actually, that whole near Northwest Side, not just Hallville, the surrounding communities that make up the near Northwest.
What are they planning on doing with that? Not to cut you off, but
with what in particular? I'm sorry, with the Education Task Force, or so the purpose of the Education Task Force is to one, identify what are the challenges with regards to education in the community, and then 2, to identify resources or solutions that the community, and it's really focused in on all those task forces that come from the Quality of Life plans are about asset-based community development. It's ABCD. And so finding out what do we have, what's in your hand, right? It's the story of Moses, right? You know, you got the staff. So what do we have in our community that we can use at our, you know, what's at our disposal, resources that we can use to get us a solution to the situation. So that's the primary focus of those groups. I know in the most recent victory that I think that they've had as a committee was Washington High School remaining open. They were the ones that really rallied that community around supporting Washington High School. And just a brief little history about it is because they understand what that school means. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's a C, D, F. It doesn't matter. They need that school in the area, because the last time they lost Washington High School, dropout rate skyrocketed in that area. Crime rate skyrocketed in that area. Poverty level skyrocketed in that area. They're all correlated. And so that's part of why they fought so hard to save that school. So that's just an example of what they do. And so their focus this summer was, you know, we've done these things with high school. How do we get them before they get to school? And so early education. I have some experience as a board member of a daycare, and so we were working on strategies on how to bolster some of the daycares and pre-Ks in the area.
No, you got it.
No.
I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, the volunteerism. So the third kind of core tenet of Allegiant Prep, rigorous academics, character development, and a commitment to community. So a lot of times, obviously, keep in mind also kind of uniquely for me, while I'm from Indianapolis, I've been very much a boomerang. So I left in 2004, showed up August of this past year. So I sit in meetings with people, and it'll be the 4th or 5th meeting, and where are you from again? So I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder, because I guess I got my Naptown card taken over the years. But with that being said, I also was very cognizant of community in terms of we want our students to have a heart for servant leadership and want them to give back. That's right. But also I have to do that myself, personally and professionally, one, to build credibility. So an example is 1 Samuel Baptist off 14th and King. I came in to Bishop Fenton before we were authorized last August and said, hey, I'm Rick Anderson. I'm working to open a school of excellence here in Hallville. He, in the moment, obviously was connected with something I said, and from there it was come and have a community meeting. Come in on Wednesdays. I help with the food pantry at Gleaners. In the summertime, I started a literacy program that we were running out of the Riverside building with 3rd and 4th graders, So a piece of it is just that sweat equity to earn credibility, I was thinking of, when you talked about the West Side Educational Task Force, the Hallville Strong, the neighborhood association, is having a meeting tomorrow at Krista Moore House. I believe around 6. Where community leaders and city councilmen will be there because they're trying to reconfigure the Hallville Neighborhood Association. So being present at those pieces, right? Even if it's sitting and being quiet and not saying anything, right? They see my face, right? If you have a question, you can't say, because also respectfully, I'm not a resident, right? I'm working to found a school, so I'm learning as well in that process of what the true needs are beyond just the school. What are community members saying? And I'd say the final piece beyond like the volunteerism is just consistency. It's to a point also, again, think about your traditional experience with a school. If I am zoned to go to a school, I don't care if it's Warren, IPS, Pike. When I was younger, I showed up and got my locker combination. Maybe we saw the principal, maybe my mom. If you see me multiple times over the next few months, this guy is crazy. He's gonna, he has to believe in what we're talking about, right? He's not going anywhere. I gave him the silent treatment. I gave him the okie doke, go around the back door. I'm here with a smile. You know why? Because the children, right, are who I'm thinking about. And I know if I can get past the mindset and build credibility, then it's just like the parent who may have, when they came in, been the furthest away from what the mission and vision was, right? Pushed and pushed and pushed. That person, that ends up being the parent that's doing the videos and the promos and they're out with the t-shirt because you build a relationship. We had our tussle and fight, right? Now we're together. Now you're honestly advocating with more clarity, right, and more conviction than I would be able to anyway. So,
can you provide a program to the police? Sorry, I just throw that in there.
Anyway. Your school is your school is K through 1, and then you're 5 through 8. Is your goal to be a feeder school for Robert School?
So he's actually a K8. And then,
K8.
Yep. And so we're doing what they call a slow growth model. That's why I said K1.
Oh, okay, because on the website it said K and 1. Okay.
So I'm actually starting with 5th and 6th graders.
5th and 6th, okay.
And so the intentionality around the K1 is there's a student level impact, but there's also a staff level impact and community level impact. If you think about the analogy of the Titanic, if you think about, so my last year in Memphis, the operator the school I was at went in and took over a low performing school. So instead of their first school where they were able to do 6th and 7th and 8th, start with 60 students and 4 teachers and then grow each year to 120 and 9 teachers, that's different than saying I'm going to start with 35 teachers and 540 students, right? It's starting at scale versus starting. That's why a lot of times when you see products, they start with prototypes. They start with small things before they go to market, before we go to full scale, right? So also, we're leaner, so in the slow growth piece, that gives you the opportunity to sit down and have individual family meetings with each parent, right? To go over the community contract. That gives us the ability to have, I know every single student's name, at least for the first 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? And then also you can start to sustain that staff and build a pipeline of people that pretty much you've operationalized your culture, your instructional program. So then once you grow to scale and it's solidified and kind of codified, then it's like, okay, now we may think about replication. So while you can be successful with starting at scale, for us kind of being startup, right, it's different than kind of being a CMO that has national backing or schools in other places, financial backing, systems that they can kind of bring in. We're building those things. So I think it's the best thing for the school and also for the students all three.
Is that a new model? How long has it been out?
It's not a new model. It's something that happens, but the challenge is twofold. One, I think this hits on your question earlier about why some schools fail, because they end up with that
535 teachers.
Yes, and that's difficult to start out with. The challenge becomes with the slow growth model, is it financially feasible, right? How do you sustain it? How do you sustain it? I'm not nearly as frugal as Mr. Rick Anderson over here. We become friends during the course of the fellowship, and he's the most frugal person I know beyond my mom, right? But really, it's about how do you have a lean budget, and I think the first thing that happens when you're developing a lean budget that gets you there is making sure that it's student-centered, right? And student focus is student success focus, right? And so while it might be really nice to have 75-inch TVs in every room, is it a necessity for student growth, for student learning, or can we get it done in a different way? And when we get to scale, we're able to do some of those things. And so making those types of decisions is hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, hopefully your budget grows as you bring in more.
Right. And you have more success because you're able to bring in outside revenue. So you do your fund development strategy. You're able to bring in some additional things. The other thing, just kind of while we're on this path and talk about why schools fail, a lot of school leaders don't have business experience, and there's a whole business side to school, and so it kind of gets lumped into operations, right?
Right.
And that's a difficult thing. That's a difficult thing. I had a friend that used to work in one of the districts, and she worked in the accounting department managing one of the federal grants for them. And she used to just, tell me, you'd be surprised how many principals in this district don't understand the basics of their budget. And they're constantly overspent, or they're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul. They're pulling from this line item with no forethought to how that impacts your budget long term, or they're doing things that just don't make fiscal sense.
Right.
And that she's having to explain to them. And so that's difficult, especially for new schools if you don't have that experience.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's talk about security. So, everybody, this is something that people don't talk about a lot. When I was shopping around for schools for my young kid, my youngest, one of the things I was asking them is, what are they doing about security? Somebody come up in here with a gun, or what are you guys doing to protect the kids? And what's your game plan if you have one?
Plan.
Right. For if something goes down, because I think that's not talked about enough. So can y'all tell us about some of those things?
Yeah, I was thinking like externally. So there's certain safety precautions, legal compliance that every single school that we would have a charter versus district. You have those things in place. Right. So entering and exiting the building, the sign-in process, right? Does this person have a background check if they're coming in to volunteer? So all of those things we would responsibly do, and also you're legally required to do. That's on one end. The other piece, in terms of student-centered safety within the building with students, because a lot of times when I talk to families, so I always like to take my Allegiant Prep hat off as a father. Am I opening a school, working to build a school that my daughter is going to go to, and I'd be happy with her being at? Right. When she goes to kindergarten, she's going to be there, right? So that's really looking yourself in the mirror, right?
Right.
And a lot of times when we talk about innovation, one-to-one Chromebooks, the STEM program, all of these things are great, and we need them, right? Because we're preparing our students not for a world that exists today, but actually for a world that they can't even imagine, right? Professions that haven't been created, industries that haven't been created. Right. I was in a room a few days ago and said, how many of you had Facebook when you were 6? That's what we're preparing our students for, right? It's not even been thought of. But inside the school, and when you go back to those basic needs, I need to know my child is safe. Yeah. I need to know they're learning, and I need to be able to communicate with staff. And not communication just when they're going to be retained or be suspended, right? There has to be a relationship. So we really, really heavily, and I know at Robert School the same way in terms of inside the building, I firmly believe that teachers can't teach and students can't learn in chaos. Okay. I'll give you a practical, example when I'm talking to families about that. When I say there's structure in the school so that students are safe. Because sometimes you say structure, you may get that, hold on, is this a prison? What do you mean? Like, what do you mean by structure? So you have to articulate, and you'll get those reactions, and you lean in, and you're not nervous. You're just like, I saw you kind of lean back. You got scared of structure, didn't you? Let me tell you exactly what that looks like. Prime example, in kindergarten and first grade, we all remember probably sitting at those really small tables and transitioning from your desk to the color carpet where we did read aloud every day on the carpet.
Legs.
Right. I give them a tangible example. When students get ready to stand up at their desk, we just don't tell 25 to 28 students, stand up everyone in kindergarten and first grade and walk to the carpet. What's going to happen? Someone's going to be elbowed, somebody's going to be knocked down, someone's going to trip, then it becomes unsafe. Someone starts to get picked on, now we have bullying or we have a fight, so it snowballs. What we say is, Mom and Dad at Allegiant Prep, when we stand up, we stand up all together. We say, red row, are you ready? Yes, we're ready. And then that row transfers and that row transfers. One, the kids just think it's a game and they're enjoying it, but really it's about their safety, so we're not stumbling over each other. So that's just one example on the inside of the building around safety and communicating that example to families up front that kind of gives them the mindset of, oh, it's safe, in addition to, again, access to the building and all the other things that you
to build off that example, I think about how we, even in 5th grade, how do we release to go to, say we're taking a classroom bathroom break. How do we release to do that? And so when teachers in the front of the class and they hold up one finger, that means everybody stands up. When they hold up 2, everybody pushes in their chair. When they hold up 3, everybody turns the same way, and then roles release one at a time, right? You have to have that structure, but the key is, when we're talking about middle school, is how do we get to the point where there's this gradual release of responsibility, right? So in 5th and 6th grade, I'm teaching you these skills, so that 7th and 8th grade, it becomes ingrained in you. It's an expectation. This is what you do. So when you go on to a rebuff or a cathedral or a tech, you know how to conduct yourself in a classroom in a way that lends itself to your learning, which is super important. I think Rick hit the nail on the head in terms of all the legal compliance things. More specifics is difficult until we both have facilities, right? Just knowing that we'll meet the legal compliance, we'll have emergency action plans. One of the things that is important to me that I think builds school safety, I go back to my days as a Boys and Girls Club director. That was our block, right? Those 4 streets that surrounded that building, that was ours, and that was sacred ground, right? And I don't care what riffraff happens 2 blocks down the street, it does not come on this block, because this is where kids learn, this is where kids develop, and part of how we did that, it was about how we build relationships in the community. The other thing was, how do we police our space, right? And so I see you walking down the street next to the school. You're on public property. You're on the sidewalk, but you smoking a cigarette and you flick a cigarette into the grass. So as an adult, do I say something? Or do I let it go? But if I revere this place and I want everybody else to revere this place as an institution of learning, I have to say something to you. And not just one time. I have to say something to you every time. Right? We talk about doing it with fidelity. And so that's a big part of how you create a safe space, because the community has to respect what that space is.
Absolutely. I mean, because you guys are in some areas that were considered a little heavy on the, I don't think that they're that way now, but in the past. So when people hear that name, they're like, oh, so that's why I asked that question, because a lot of parents, probably love the school, but may be concerned about it. What are you doing?
And they have a misguided perception, about Hallville.
And it's funny because you do. That's sometimes not spoken, but you get that with people like, oh yeah, I'm really into it, but where is it at? That kind of thing, right? So it's like, come on, I know what you're saying, that kind of thing. But if we really look at current events and even the last 10 or 15 years, when there's been kind of outrageous violence in schools, a lot of times it's not even happening. Right. So there's that side. True. The other piece on the practical level, again, just like Robert was saying, once you, and this is again speaking from experience in Memphis, and the same thing that you do here, you find those superheroes for the school, those super champions. It could be that uncle that's always on the porch, it could be that grandma. Literally, the area was called Westwood in Memphis, and the perimeter was about a 200 probably square foot building, and we would walk the building every single day. And when we moved in, and that person you see cutting the grass every day that takes really great care of the grass or knows everything, hey, my name is Rick Anderson, I'm the principal, just let me know, we're not only just a school, but we want to ensure that our children are safe. If you see anything, right, in terms of externally a threat to the school, or if you see one of our students in this uniform pulling flowers, call me or text me, and they end up being the ones that kind of be the lookout for the school. So I think it's systematic in what you do, but it's also practical in what you do, because they need to see you and know that, hey, it's not just about them learning, it's community engagement.
What do y'all think is causing a lot of these schools to close?
So if you look at it, we did a little bit, but I think really just on face value, it's about students, right? We kind of talked about this last time about how schools work from a practical level. The state, every child. I hate when I have to say this, but every child comes with a check, right? And it follows them. So it doesn't matter if you go to public, private, not because of the vouchers or charge allotted to them. The money's allotted, right? And so if students and families are voting with their feet, and they're leaving your school, then so too does the revenue. And when you have a 90,000 square foot facility, and you are at 25% capacity, it becomes unreasonable to be able to maintain that type of facility. And so you start seeking other options, I think, first, to save
like a business.
that space. I mean, you try to do other things. But ultimately, I think in a lot of those situations, it came down to dollars and cents. Unfortunately, being a lifelong resident of Indy, it was Black Indy that got hit the hardest, that is hurting. it's not just because it's about history.
Those charter schools are revered, as something different than the norm.
So the schools that we've lost have a lot of history in our community. They've produced a lot of greats in our community, and so I don't think there's a single person in Black India that's sad to see them go, and wishes that there could have been something different done.
Sure. Are you talking about the IBS schools?
I am in particular right now speaking about those schools.
Yeah.
I think we all wish that there could have something different could have been done, but I think from a financial standpoint, I get it. I'm not condoning it or justifying it. I'm just saying I get it.
Capacity.
And I hope that the reforms that are going on in the district, that ultimately it bears fruit where children are safe and they have access to a quality education,
That's what it's all about.
So that's the biggest thing. And when I talk about, Allegiant Prep being a K through 8, we have students, our founding class that'll reach 2020, they'll be in 8th grade, our founding 2030 and 2031 class in 2025. And 2030 and 2031 is the year they would go to college. So that's what we refer to them by as when they're in kindergarten, 1st grade. So even they kind of have that mindset. But I always say, I don't specify, what type of school. The program that we want them to be ready to go into is to take AP courses, to get into an international baccalaureate program, to go in and know exactly what SAT and ACT score they need to get, to qualify for the 21st Century Scholars, to go to a 4-year college and have a purpose and plan. What school that is, I hope it's in the neighborhood, right?
Absolutely.
If it's not, then there may be clout for me to say, hey, we need to think about a high school if our children don't have somewhere to go. So my biggest thing is the access and opportunity and them being able to write their own ticket, not saying, no, you just need to take this vocational class, or you need to just do this, because that's what happens when you come into high school with deficits. We don't have time, right? It's like you got to go this way or that way. So I very much hope, and I know Robert does too, that these schools that our children in these neighborhoods are supposed to be going to, the reforms can happen. I'm excited about it, right? And I'm saying, hey, this is my contribution to it. I want to send you students that are on grade level, academically, socially, and emotionally, and ready to thrive within your programs.
I think it's our responsibility to the school leaders now, even with Rick being K1, me being 5'6", that we start to have some conversations with school leaders that are in high school to say, hey, you have been in a school for the last 4 years, and we would hope that our students would want to choose a school like yours. What does it take to be successful in your school? Right, and we're taking those things down, and we're incorporating some of those skills necessary for our students, so that when they get to those schools, they are ultimately competitive. But over and above that, we want to be able to show and prove in our first few years of operation that we are producing top-notch scholars, so they'll want to take our scholars, and we're building strong relationships so that we have that pipeline where we know exactly where our students can go, where they can receive the same type of education that we're going to be providing.
Okay. And what's your enrollment capacity?
So in year 1 for us, we're aiming to have 120 scholars, 60 5th graders and 60 6th graders.
Okay.
The same, just kindergarten and 1st grade. So year 1, 120, and 60 kindergarten, 60 1st grade.
That's awesome. I want to rewind a little bit when it comes to the curriculum. What kind of devices and new technology, if any, that you guys are using? I remember you spoke on using some traditional methods, hitting the ground with the paper and pen kind of thing. So what kind of things are you guys doing in your schools? Because you are competing with schools that have iPads and all these other things.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
So I think we're probably both in the same mindset of being very traditionalist when it comes to education methods. One of the things, though, that we have recently incorporated in our school model, we've connected with a company that works with Purdue Polytech, and they operate out of IUPUI to provide a couple things. One is what they call Learning Commons. And essentially, they provide, like, you have this huge TV here, if it was touch screen, and they have adaptive software that's actually a software that learns. So let's say that we put an algebraic equation up there, you can physically solve the algebraic question on the touch screen. And so
does that take place at chalkboard?
And for a lot of students, having that hands-on really takes the math next level for them. But let's say Ray tries it one way and you get the right answer, but Patrick tries it another way and gets the right answer. it saves both ways in the system, right? And so let's say Ebony tries it and she doesn't get it right, and finally the teacher.
Yeah, that's normal.
I keep lobbing them up there for him. I'm sorry.
Let me see those transcripts.
Got both
Transcripts, please.
So let's say she does it, and the teacher says, "Hey, let's unlock these answers. Both of your answers and both of the ways you've done it actually shows up in the system." So that's one of the ways that we're incorporating the technology. The other thing is what we call Power Hour, right? So we have Power Hour. It happens once a day, every day. For ELA, it happens once a day for math, right? And essentially, it's a station rotation model. There's 3 stations. The first station, they're one-to-one on Chromebooks. They're working on adaptive software. So they're working on Achieve 3000 or Zeal. Oh my goodness, I had a great experience with it in Memphis earlier this year.
What is Achieve 3000?
It's an adaptive software, man, that students take an assessment and it meets them absolutely where they are, gives them modules to work on based upon where they are. So if you're a 5th grader and your ELA is at 2nd grade level, it starts you there, but it pushes you to get to where you need to be. And let's say you rocking through, you get to 3rd, maybe 2nd semester, 3rd grade level, and you hit a snag. They actually have a live person that you can tap into right then and there. These are licensed educators that work for Achieve 3000 that can help you work through it. And so, so there's a lot of minimal instruction that happens from the teacher.
Oh, nice.
So that's huge. The second station is small group instruction. So just like we're sitting around this small table right now, you have an opportunity to get some individualized instruction with your teacher. And then the last station, because we are working with middle school students, trying to get them towards high school and college, and working with this release of responsibility, it's independent work time, so they have an opportunity to do a few things. It'll be more structured in 5th and 6th grade, less structured in 7th and 8th grade as we go on, but they'll be doing things like getting back on Achieve 3000, for example, is one of your options. Another one is, let's say that you took a quiz yesterday and you bombed it. You got an opportunity to go get some extra credit and to rework that. Or let's say you missed your homework. You didn't turn in your homework in the morning. You got to get it done today, one way or another, right? And so instead of at our school, you miss lunch. If you haven't turned in your homework, you go to homework club during lunch instead of having a social and recreational lunch. You go to homework club to get your homework done. And so let's say you missed that ELA session. You got a chance to get that homework done during your Power Hour session as an opportunity. So those are a couple ways that we're connecting students to technology to enhance their learning.
Okay. Yeah. So in the same way, everything Robert said, it'll just look a little bit different with KM1, where we have literacy rotations and we'll have computer or adaptive software where students have Chromebooks, and one person could be working on, the Boss EE, the other person could be working on blends and diagraphs, depending on where they are with the diagnostic assessments they're taking. The other piece is those reports, and Lexia is a free tool for any teachers that are out there. And there's some other tools that actually provide the teacher with reports, so they also can see what's doing, because a lot of times the teacher won't be there. As students matriculate from our lower academy, K through 4, our upper academy is 5 through 8. Our electives will be art and PE, but in upper it'll be PE and technology. So within the 5 through 8, students start, with the basics of computation, right? How to use, the different office suites, Excel, etc. From there, by the time they're in 8th grade, we envision having more of like a robotics setting for students, so they're getting a technology feel, right? Obviously, right now, there's not a program that we have, but we have a little bit of time to get there. The other piece, which is awesome, and see I think the term innovation is used a lot around education, innovation, but also thinking about how technology can be used to innovate how teachers are developed or receive development. So the same way we played sports, in high school, and you would go back and you look at video, after Sunday or Saturday for college football teams, they're going to go back and look at video, and they're going to see, what the QB didn't see or what the line didn't see, and why they made that, whatever it may be. There's video platforms. Torch is one of them that a lot of educators and schools may use. But we're only so many people with a leadership team. If you think about 2 instead of 17, one of the biggest reasons why teachers leave is because I don't feel like I'm being developed. I don't feel like I'm getting feedback. I feel like I may be getting observed once a year and getting a number, but that doesn't mean that I'm being developed, right? So actually taking tools and saying, hey, we're going to video you. it'll be 5 minutes of your guided reading lesson, and it specifically is going to look at when you're listening to students in the retail. You can give that to them as a school leader. You can look at it, provide feedback. At minute 2, you ask a question. They actually didn't give you a right answer. They said the boy was angry. You could have asked, what in the text tells you it's angry? So before we have a check-in on your development, we're both looking at this tool and stopping and saying, okay, so Tuesday when you go back in for the lesson, what exactly do we need to change here? So also there's a way to kind of use technology to bolster development for teachers, which is the biggest reason in any profession, right? You want to know you're growing to be as good as possible for you know, your outcome. So
I think one other way to use that teacher video, sending out in the first 3 weeks of school, we'll be sending out video every day, right? Okay. So today we have a quick staff meeting. It's like when I worked at Indy Parks, I had a pool, right? And we had to do so many hours of training, and so in order to get that amount of hours of training, we had to do many in-service trainings. And so that's one thing that we'll do every morning before school starts, right? And so let's say today our objective for all teachers is to focus in on culture of error, right? How do we make students very comfortable with making error? They're going out there and they're taking academic risks. And so we'll send a video out. Today, Mr. Anderson did an amazing job with culture of error. Take a look at this short clip of...
That's how teachers be for real, sort of like, think about it, you're showing me off to my peers.
Right, so you get the opportunity to show, not just say, hey, this is what I expect, but here's a video of how it looks. One of the other things Rick brought up that jogged my memories about how we use that technology and the data that we pull from the technology. So we have what we call Saturday Academy. It'll happen once each semester, 6 weeks. And so there's a number of ways that we decide who needs to go to Saturday Academy, which essentially is it's additional support for our students. And so one of the ways that we gather that data is from those reports that are pulled from that adaptive software, right? So if you're supposed to be in 5th grade, you're just stuck at that 3rd grade level, you're a prime candidate. Using that and a few other metrics, but that's an opportunity for us to pull some of that data to determine how do we support these students the way they need to be supported.
Okay. One thing I wanted to touch on is uniforms. Now, you guys both have uniforms?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm up and down with the uniform. Okay, I had a kid who go to school in pajamas and he get A's and B's because the school culture is wear whatever you want, as long as you exceed. Then I have schools where it's like you got to have a uniform. Can you guys explain the logic behind the uniform and why that's important?
No, that's a good question.
We both worked in corporate America, and I guess we had our uniform, right? That was the shirt and tie. That was our uniform. I think for me, when we look at school uniform and what it means, and particularly for our culture, for our school culture, it's about removing all obstacles and barriers and distractions from learning. That's a big part of it, right? The second thing is, what am I ultimately preparing you for? And so one of the tenets of Vanguard Collegiate is to create students who are critical and independent thinkers, but more than that, they're real vanguards, which is a leader in thought, word, and action, right? And so there's this civic focus. Our students are going to Page at the Indiana State Senate. They're learning modern and ancient political theory in middle school. And when they're operating in that realm, they have to wear the uniform of that realm. And so I'm preparing you to make sure that you hold yourself at a higher level with regards to efficacy. So it's not just having the uniform. Is your shirt tucked in? Right? Is your collar down? Right? Are your shoes tied? Are you doing? No, sir. No, sir.
Students do that though.
That would have been me and Pat at LN, but no, sir, not at that guard. And so making sure that we're training them early in those things.
For sure.
Yeah, it's the distractions, and it's also professionalism, right? And one could argue, well, the profession they may go into may not require them to do that. They may be working in Silicon Valley and wear sandals and jeans every single day. But the thing is, the distraction, one is the first piece, and two, they have to. When you're in Rome, you have to go. What it do is Romans do, right? So they have to just be prepared to. I believe that the students that are going to matriculate to the schools and graduate are going to be world thinkers. They're going to be in a situation where they If they walk into, a country club, or if they walk into, an urban league meeting, or if they walk into a business meeting at Eli Lilly, they'll know how they should dress and also how they should conduct themselves, right? The other piece is it's somewhat more so for the biggest sales for a charter school or a high quality school is the family and the student. And what I mean by that is those individuals going out and talking about the school. And a lot of times we would have, and this is, I'm visioning once the doors open, right? A lot of times the biggest ways families find out about students are, I go to Kroger off Michigan every single day, and I always see the other kids come in, but they always have their shirt, and it's always tucked, and I love that brand, and they always sit down and do their homework, and when the other students come, they don't have. That's a lot of piece how people find out about the school once it opens. So it's a brand that they're also representing in the same way you were at Nike, in the same way you were at gray area, right? Building a brand and individual. I had my gray area shirt on, and I was out of town in Milwaukee, right? Walking around, right? So that was like that was, and I didn't say it just to get brownie points, but I'm just saying it's building residual, right? For you that you may not even know is happening by the people that come in, right? So right. The other piece of that though, right, is just when it can be, and this is the contrast, is when it's overbearing and it's creating an expectation that families aren't equipped to be able to do, right? So if I say you have to wear a black belt, you have to wear black shoes, and it's the 5th time you come in, right, and it's not having any compassion. No, we told you, we're going to call you, you need to pick them up. Obviously, you need to be aware and alert. There's something happening where they don't have it.
Right.
Do I need to go get a pair of shoes, right? Or are you more flexible? It can be the base color is blue, black, and gray, right? No neon colors, no light ups. That's all we're saying, right? Anything else you can do, mom or dad, right? All you have to do is get the shirt. You don't have to get the pants from the vendor. You can go get blue pants from somewhere else as long as they're not jeans. So it's also having compassion and being flexible and not creating a uniform expectation that can't be met by every single family.
And how are you supporting those families, right? Do you have a stock of uniforms that, if this child's family comes in and we really legit can't afford that $20 shirt, right? And we've bumped into the area. Do you have the stock to be able to support that student, supply that student? You know what, Mom? I get it. You don't have the $20. When do you think you can get it to me? Can you give me $2 today? Can you put something on it today, so that we can move forward? Because ultimately, what I need is for your child to be in class and to learn.
And okay. I mean, but do you think the uniforms take, away from the
creativity or
expression?
I would say, I love these practical examples, but kids find ways to in any way. Like I remember, even in an environment where, so the middle school I was, at, and I'll do behavior and then come back to the uniform. We didn't have any fights like the 2 or 3 years I was there. Like fights just didn't exist. I remember one time the guys were in the bathroom doing like a kind of a swing club or whatever, and I just came in. I got wind of it from another student and came in and just took off my watch like, who's ready for the fight club? Guys started crying and all that. So we're not even hard. We're not even doing that, right? But they'll find but they'll find creative ways to be defiant, right? So the way we acknowledge people at the end of community circle, we did it in Memphis. We would do it at Allegiant Prep. It's a ritualistic thing where we come in and celebrate. It's almost like a pep rally, right? FAMU's homecoming just ended. It's almost like a homecoming every single week on Friday for students to come in. We're acknowledging students that have had a certain amount of growth in our reading, a certain amount of growth in our math, that have been displaying our core values of perseverance, unity, and they're celebrated to get claps. And we do, 2 claps on 2 for Ray. Everybody, 1, 2. They'll start doing more than 2, and it'll trickle off. Like that was a way to kind of push. Like it's not cussing you out or saying something, but it's like, come on, you guys, it's 2 claps on 2. So they're gonna find ways to push anyway, right? With uniforms, there's still ways where they find creativity. At Freedom Prep, they had a tie, and they would put it into a bow tie, right? The base color of the socks are black and brown, but I'm going to come and have a design, on the socks that aren't offensive or against the culture, that kind of thing. The other thing I think that you have to be intentional about is, as a school, while you have these very, very prescribed portions of your school, right? You have to think about a full schedule, and for instance, we didn't have a football or a basketball team, and we wouldn't, at Allegiant Prep starting out, but we have a spirit week where students can come and they can be their favorite literary character. They can come and they can dress like their teacher. So how are you being intentional around creating areas for creativity in terms of style, in terms of personality, within a structure where everybody understands our why and our language.
Something that I stole from my time at Freedom Prep that we'll do at Vanguard too. You talk about what are the additional accessories that you can add,
Sure.
right? So you want to be eccentric, you want something that makes you stand out from everybody else with your uniform. I tell you what, if you have perfect homework this week, at the end of the week when we do our community circle, those that have perfect attendance this week get a special tie to wear for next week. So now you stand out.
Yeah.
Right? And we've taken that out.
Good.
But over and above you standing out, we're celebrating the expectations.
And it's goal
that
setting
we're
too.
looking
That's
for.
good.
You know,
Yeah.
so.
How are you guys handling discipline? Okay, so this is
that's
a
a good
big one
question.
in schools, because a lot of times, again, African Americans, I think, are schooled differently in regards to behavior. We come from a different background, different system, and that doesn't. There's bad kids in all communities, right? In all races, right? But we know for sure that if a black kid does something, it's like, okay, you ain't gonna do that again, and I'm gonna make an example out of you. So what kind of discipline programs or whatever are you guys
Like
using?
methods.
Because some schools use the color method. You get on green today. That means for some reason green was bad in one school. I was just like, green is bad, so they didn't even have a logic to the colors, and you would think the green would be good, but green was bad, So, well, what kind of things are you guys doing?
So, to your point, I think everything has to be intentional,
Sure.
right? And there has to be a purpose behind everything that we do, especially in the area of discipline. Kind of high level, what we're doing. There's two systems, right?
Okay.
So there's a classroom-wide system. So as a teacher, and for our 5th and 6th grade teachers, they actually rotate the classrooms. The kids don't rotate until they get to the upper academy.
Okay.
And so after I'm done with my class, there's a few things that are part of the ritual to end class, and one of the things is to evaluate our behavior as a group.
Okay.
Right? Were we professional? Were we neutral? Were we unprofessional?
Right.
As a group. And so there are rewards and consequences assigned as a group based upon how we performed in this particular classroom.
Right.
But there's also an individual system, which essentially is paychecks, right? And so everybody starts out the week with a certain dollar amount, and so we reward or take away based upon the decisions that you've made. And when I was a teacher, one of the things I used to do at the very beginning of every class, my goal is today, in this class, to give out, for you all to earn, not give, for you all to earn $150 from me.
Okay.
Right? And we talking about 1s, 5s, 10s increments. But I want students to earn $150 today.
Vanguard collegiate bucks.
Let's do this. Exactly. And so those things are actually awarded based upon how you meet expectations of our school values.
Yeah.
And so, one of our school values, for instance, is hard work. And so let's say that there's independent work time, and I notice that Patrick is just moving. As a teacher, as I'm circulating, first and foremost, I'm going to call it out and speak it to the class, right? I love the way that I see Patrick's pencil just moving diligently. He's working hard. He is working hard. I need to see more of that. I need to see more of that. Now, it may come around and Patrick may go above and beyond, and I'll say, you know what? I may do it small, I may do it loud, and say, you know what? That hard work, that's $5 for Patrick.
I'll take
So
it
now, you know what happens, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, shit, he's giving them $1. I'm about to, let's go ahead and get it. Right? Let's get this money. And so there's rewards that are assigned. At the end of the month, we actually will have a store that'll be stocked with things. It's everything from the Nike Elite socks. I'm hoping to get some of those slides as well. Things
Nice.
I might come be a student now. I'm in the store.
Give me some bucks.
So I'm relying on some of my resources from Boys and Girls Club days, but we're going to have a fully stocked store of things that we know students, that attract students that they really want, they want to work towards. But in addition to that, there's things that they can earn class-wide, right? So dance is huge in middle school.
Oh, yes.
We're not just going to have a dance for a dance sake. You got to earn that, right? And so using those types of things as incentives for students to move their behavior in the right way. In terms of when we run into situations where behavior is just completely disruptive to the learning process and how we deal with that, to use less technical terms, really for me it's always been about how do we process with students, right? Because there's always a why behind the misbehavior. But in order to be effective at my job as a school leader, I have to be efficient at getting to that why, finding a solution for you as a student to make sure that we don't come back to that why and then getting you back to class.
For sure.
Because, again, at the end of the day, my goal is for you to be in class and learning. You can't spend a whole bunch of time down in my office or down at the dean's office while we have reflection papers for students to really be able to articulate what happened. But when you go back to class, it's not just that I'm sending you, throwing you into class, because we know how that plays out, right? You come to class, to the teacher, it's one of those situations. It's me as school leader or as the dean coming in and saying, hey, such and such has earned their way back into class via, X, Y, Z, but before they do, they have something to say. And there's an apology because you have violated the community.
Right.
You have violated the community because chances are your behavior is so disruptive. You've not just taken away your learning. Right. You've also interrupted the learning of others. And for that, you need to make amends.
Right.
And so there's that as well. Even in some cases, there'll be some isolation, but it won't be the type of isolation. Like I remember, I love St. Andrews, but I got in trouble. You appreciate this one, Patrick. I got in trouble because everybody was standing and doing the Hail Mary, and I refused to stand for the Hail Mary because I was Baptist and I didn't do the Hail Mary. And so they put, I was, man, in 5th grade, and so they put me in school suspension.
Young Kaepernick.
They didn't even have an in-school suspension space, so they put a desk in a closet.
Oh, in the closet.
They put a desk in a closet, man, and that's where I did my work. So we won't do that. Right.
No.
So if you
did they close the door?
They didn't close the door. They cracked it. They cracked it.
Wow.
So.
That was nice.
Yeah, that was nice.
That's so nice.
So so when we talk about separation or isolation, what that looks like, it's a desk at the back of the classroom, right? So you're separated from the community, and so if Rick is in isolation, Ebony's desk is near his. Please don't you dare talk to Rick because he's in isolation. Because the consequence for you interacting with Rick excessively is you ending up in an isolation situation yourself because clearly you're not understanding what's happening here and you're violating the terms of the community, right? And so the expectation is for you not just to be back in the back of the room and chilling, right? The expectation is for you to still participate in class. And so when the teacher says, I need to see all college-bound hands up answering this question, your hand better be up. Matter of fact, as somebody is in isolation that's working towards earning their way back to the community, your hand should be the very first hand that goes up. At the end of each period, there's a sheet for teachers to fill out to determine whether you have earned your way back to the community for that class period or not. And so once you're able to successfully go through a progression of classes where you've earned your way back to the community, then you're able to go back into the community. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Robert said, and it would be the same thing. That I guess what I was thinking about to try to bucket into 3 things is it's the culture, it's the communication of the culture, and then it's the discipline system. A lot of times we just think about discipline isolated, Mad Joe, lean on me walking down the hallway with that, right? And that's it. We think about worst case scenario, so we're reacting to a lot of things versus being proactive. So the first thing in terms of culture is, again, I give the example of clarity in our explanation to families and also to students about around our why. This is how we stand up. This is how we transition. If I need to use the restroom, I'll raise my finger. If I need a pencil. So anything you can think of that could throw class off or disrupt it, we've thought about that and we've systematized it to create a language that you now know in kindergarten or 1st grade. So you know how to function and operate. Think about if you start a job and there was no orientation. I just put you on, go out and do whatever you need to do. So we're orienting them, and that has to be very clear. An example of like a core value, respect. So when we have all of our students together in the community for the first week of school, and we say respect is treating others the way we want to be treated. We don't just move on. We say, we're going to show you a non-example. So as we know, when we're in kindergarten and 1st grade, we're still struggling with the Minosaur. Mine, right? Right. If you have that, I maybe don't have the social or oral language to know, right? I haven't been told how to, may I please use your pencil? Give me that. That's mine, right? That's where I'm coming in with. So we show that example almost like you're sitting and eating popcorn to students, right? We stop. So students, how would you feel if you were the student who had your pencil taken? I wouldn't feel good about that. I wouldn't feel like, so we have that conversation. You're right. We don't want people to feel like they're not being respected, they're not being treated fairly. Now we're going to show you the correct way.
Right.
May I please use your pencil, Ebony? And we model that explicitly for the core values. And as Robert said, narrate, right? So we're narrating things. Think about the culture of, I got you, and I'm trying to get you in trouble, versus I'm narrating you and I actually want to see you. So think about what you're implicit, you know, what you're inferring. We want to actually see you doing good versus being caught and being the bad guy. I remember being caught and being the bad guy in township schools, at Heritage Christian, all these different schools that I went to my entire career, right? The other piece, so that's the culture and onboarding and communication, right? Another example with teachers sometimes. I need everybody to get ready to go. And then students start doing 7 different things. You have to go back. Do they actually know what getting ready? No, think about it. Well, they're always talking, they're always starting to push. What is getting ready to go? Cool. What we're going to practice today, what exactly do you want them to do tomorrow? Well, I want them to put their binder down, their pencil down, and to stand up behind their chair. That's going to be the win for us tomorrow. When I come in, I'm coaching you, right? And then it gets better. It's, okay, well, it wasn't, people weren't, so it gets better. So being clear on what your communication is, that's on the front end before we even get to the discipline setup piece. If that's all out of whack, this really doesn't matter at the end, right? Because students aren't going to care about the color system. They're not going to care about the tie because they're not invested in the culture. The end piece in terms of those culture systems, again, when we sit down with families and students, we say, hey, mom and dad, we know that in order for your child to be successful, as Robert said, they have to be in class. They can't be out of class. We want them to be in class. So on your end, that means they need to be here every single day. On our end, that means we're engaging them, equipping them, and inspiring them to be in class and pushing them through the rigor of what's sat in front of them. Also, that's another conversation, because if you have stuff that's not challenging a student, then also I'm straight on this, right? Or if it's too challenging, I'm straight on this, right? And I'm going to find something else to do. The final piece is, even with students, and this is maybe unique, and those listening that have those kindergarten and first grade students, sometimes, again, what I've seen is when a student comes in and they haven't been in a structured environment, I'm actually trying to do whatever I can do to get out of this class, right? And in my past history, in my 4 years before here, this extensive life that I've had, I can just throw this tantrum, and it's good. I don't have to do anything. You're going to call mom or do whatever. Nope. Guess what? We're going to break that in about a month. So I see what you're doing, because I'm aware every day after snack, you throw a fit. So I'm not going to sit and wait for you to do this. I'm going to figure out before we have to take a break. What is it? What is it, Rick? What is it specifically? And then you really get to the heart of it. You address it, and what you end up saying is, I love you, and I love you so much that I'm not calling your mom or dad. You're going to go back to class, and you're going to learn. We're going to solve it here, because typically they're waiting to go here in elementary or middle school so they can get sent home, so they can say, no, they're not doing this right. Nope, we're not going to go there. We're going to handle it right here, and you're going to go back to class because you need to be learning. And once you kind of figure out you're not going to do this double life with a teacher and the school leader, there's a connection there, then I think all of those things, again, communication, culture, and the discipline system, equip students to understand why I need to actually be here, right? In addition to the supports for students that have, if you need to bring in interventions and behavioral pieces, you have to have that. But a lot of that can be addressed within 90% by just having those 3 pieces. But you still have to be able to manage the 5% that are not going to really fit in clearly into that system.
What do you guys think has happened? Because as you talk about the strategies, as you talk about modeling everything, all the nuances that go into an 8-hour day in teaching, it sounds exhausting.
Whose day is 8 hours?
Well, I know, right? Technically, right. So, but when I think about, look, that tells you what time I leave. No, I'm kidding. But when I'm maybe I get all my work done. How about that? I actually plan on my planning period instead of going to lunch or doing other stuff. Maybe I actually use it.
She's out of there.
And I get there early than everybody. Lights are still on. Anyway. So when back at you. So when I think about, though, when we went to school, we didn't have all these strategies. So what is it the child is different, or is it the child? What is it that's different from when we went to school and we didn't need all of that structure to now? Why do we need all these things now?
Culture's different. I don't think it's the child is different at all. I think it's culture is different, right? We live in a microwave society. Everything is instant. It's right here. So you got a bad case of the, what you call it, the Minosaurus. You got a bad case of the Minosaurus, which happens to a lot of adults still, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. And so culture is different. I remember 4th grade, Mrs. Cooper. When I was at St. Andrews, she was an 8th grade teacher, right? And Miss Cooper had this reputation as being just this mean, hard teacher. She wasn't really mean. Her class was extremely rigorous. I was one of those students that wasn't challenged in class, and so I started misbehaving. I had my A's, but I was misbehaving because I was doing my work. So yeah, I'm gonna start messing with you. Miss Cooper came down, and I thought I was in trouble. It was a wrap for me. I just knew she was gonna call my mama. It was gonna be ugly. And Miss Cooper said, "Hey, I've seen your report card, and I heard that you're an amazing student. I can't wait to teach you. I'm gonna challenge you harder, more than you've ever been challenged. You're gonna learn more than you've ever been learning." We don't have
the Coopers.
The Coopers.
Yes.
You have them here and there, but what if you had a whole school where that was the expectation from the janitor to the school leader? That was the expectation of everybody. That doesn't exist in every school for every student, and that's a big part of it. I substitute taught, and I won't name the school system, a few weeks ago in one of our township schools, and I was doing some positive narration, and I gave a student a compliment on their intelligence. And man, you would have thought I cussed about that, cussed them out and told them to say something bad about their mama, the way they looked at me. And when I talked to the student after class, they never had a teacher. We're talking about a 7th grader. They never had a teacher compliment them on an intelligent answer. You know, my big thing was, you used the complete sentence, you provided evidence, you even threw in a couple big words in there. I was really proud of them.
Their culture's so bad that even the kids laugh at that, and they think it's something offensive. So when you say culture, you're talking about the kids too. The kids too. They think that that's something to laugh at.
And so our challenge as school leaders is, how do we build this culture that celebrates academic success? How do we build a culture that celebrates team, right? Building one another up. And so I'm lifting as I climb. And that mentality, that's a big part, I think, of what's missing. But in terms of on the other side of that, with the discipline and the structure that's necessary, I think a lot of that lends itself to just being in a microwave Facebook society where everything is at our fingertips. And so if it's not instantaneous, we begin to lose our work ethic, right? We begin to lose patience. And though we all know, everybody in this room knows, those are crucial characteristics that students need to develop to be successful in any career path that they choose to go down. So.
Right, and that's funny because Pat was talking about how he had slept in class during high school.
I saw it.
And so that makes a lot of sense because, as you said, as far as the consistency and those Miss Coopers not being everywhere, because you'll have a teacher that'll let him sleep
in that class.
But then he'll have a Miss Cooper and he can't sleep.
Man.
Mr. Tufay wouldn't
Shout out to Mr. Tufay. You know what, man? Is she still alive? Is she? That's right. I think she passed 2002, 2001. Man, like the sweetest lady ever.
But she wasn't putting on Pat's mess.
No,
there was no sleeping in her class.
I mean, she kept me in check.
There was none of that. Miss Canary.
Oh yeah, man, she was another one.
So.
Those are the teachers that you remember, the ones that are hard on you and the ones that give you structure. I can't remember any other teachers except for those teachers that were hard on me or that had expectations.
And that's really what it was. They weren't hard on you. They had high expectations.
Now you met Mr. Jones.
Tell us about Mr. Jones.
Called every kid stupid. I hate stupid kids. Look, I know the Greek alphabet because of Mr. Jones. I think I said this last time. I wake up and go to sleep with the Greek alphabet in my head. Never used it a day in my life, but because of Mr. Jones, I know the Greek alphabet. I have no use for it. Y'all like to hear it?
No.
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, chi, epsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. Mr. Jones! Where you at, man?
There it is.
I need to ask him why he made us learn the Greek alphabet in the 3rd grade.
Third grade?
He was probably Greek.
He's like, y'all gonna learn something to motivate me to come to this class with y'all stupid kids.
Man, he called, hey, you got something wrong. I hate stupid kids. I mean, that was his thing.
Listen, he would be all over Facebook nowadays.
They would have had him on tape.
Oh, man. my 6th grade teacher, Mr. Clee, he put hands on kids, man. He threatened me. Listen, man, this dude threatened me, man. He pulled me out in the hallway. I told my mom this 3 weeks ago, and she was mad at me. I'm like, Mom, that was years ago. She was like, why? Like, boy, why?
Would you just not tell me?
Yeah. Like, why you ain't never tell me that? Man, Ma, this dude had me in the hallway and was like, I tell you what, if you go home and tell your parent or your grandfather anything, I'll sue your ass. That's exactly what he said.
My God.
So, of course, me being, I'm like, nah, I ain't gonna say nothing. But man, this dude strong-armed this dude, this kid named BJ, strong-armed him and put him in the closet. Come here. And have him in the closet.
Bad, man.
I told you, man, to have a seat. But that's how they talk. I told you, man, to have a seat. Just sit down. You're not gonna sit down, man. Look. I had a teacher, man. He made the dude pull his desk outside in the cold, like outside, like.
You gonna look outside the window in on this conversation?
Hey, man, this dude. Listen. He made this dude in Steve Robinson. That was his name. Sorry, but look, man. Steve used to call this dude OJ because he looked like OJ Simpson.
Oh, man.
So like Steve would be look, he's teaching health, and Steve would be in the back of the class. OJ, like every time he says something.
Is this pre-Jew stuff? Is it before the case?
No, this is before the case, man. This is before the case, man. But this guy he looked just like OJ Simpson. So every time he says something, so the heart functions. OJ. So then he said, Steve, grab your desk. Listen, grab your desk. So like the main doors are like right outside his class, and he made Steve, sit outside the class, man.
Outside the school.
Outside the school.
Ooh, in his desk.
Coat outside, no coat, nothing. Wow. Oh man, we were dying. Oh man, that was funny.
That's what we call power over purpose. Man.
Lack of emotional constancy. Yeah, when it becomes personal with us, because that happens. That happens where, and that's the thing. Like a lot of times, adults, they're so caught up in the moment of teaching and managing. Like students have a very, very high level of social intelligence. So that student knew that OJ was what his trigger was, right? And he's going on the top. So it's almost like even with teacher training and development, you say, hey, do you understand? They're doing this every time, right? There should be no point where you should be mad at HR. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm talking like we're joking and laughing, but there's just, so that's one piece. The other, going back to like the original question, it's, so one, on a historical piece, we know that there's been a full-out assault on the black household and family since we came over, right? Right, so obviously, generationally, there's going to be deeper levels, and it's no wonder now the black household in a lot of scenarios is just an empty vessel, right? And the school, over the deterioration of the household, has been a recipient over the years of what students do or do not have coming into the school, but schools haven't really adapted to. It's just like the teacher says, I just teach math. No, you can't just teach math. What are you talking? Like people will say confidently in interviews, I just teach math because if I can focus them there, so you're just going to ignore everything else. Right. Yeah. I don't need to. Or the school that opens in the community says, no, we're just a great school. We don't need to engage the community. And you hear that. I was in a meeting with a board member, I think, from IPS meeting with them, and she was just giving me a soundbite of a school who had that perception or mindset, right, in a negative way, not an IPS district school. So I think the other piece is, again, as students are kind of enculturated into the school, we have to be more than just teaching a quality education. When we put our stake down there, it's kind of one being understanding, but then understanding that if we just focus on math, literacy, science, STEM, and ignore everything else, that they're not going to be successful. So I guess I don't think as much about getting caught up in it's the end. And I'll go back to my mission again. The end of the mission is to live a life of positive action. So there's a group where it's like, man, these kids nowadays, I don't know what they, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what is going on. And I'm like, get up and let's get in here and do something then. You know what I'm saying? Like we have to engage them. We have to be relevant. Let's figure out a solution even if we fail. So I think about that piece, and I know historically why we kind of are in the scenario that we are in a lot of schools across the country. But at the same time, it's just coming in and saying, hey, I see it, I understand it. So how are we going to replicate a system of the teacher that Robert talked about, the teacher that, minus the disrespect, who the not so much fear, but we are invested in the expectation, absolutely, right? So we have to create a system of that. Right. That's right. How are teachers onboarded? How is their teacher toolkit developed, right? Right. Do you know about emotional constancy? Do you know about how to provide positive narration? Do you know how to not engage? If a student is intentionally doing something and throwing a book in the air, do you know how to not engage and still keep it? Right. So one, how do we build the teacher's toolkit? Two, what is the clarity around our expectations with students, with families? And then three, what is our incentive system, right, that we have? Yeah. And all of those things together start to kind of, in a sense, replace those individuals that may have just been that one teacher. And to be honest, we weren't going to make it off just that one teacher anyway, right? Because of what they're going to move to the next grade and the teacher's not there and they're just invested in the teacher back here, right? So we have to kind of be more innovative and thoughtful around how do we create systems that will live beyond a great individual teacher or teachers. So yeah.
Thank you, man. This has been a great dialogue, man.
Appreciate you.
We always love that you guys come here and school us and the viewers on just charter schools in general, because it's a big deal right now. You know, the way it's looking like it's going is a lot of schools are going to be chartered up. So you might as well get with something that's going to have give your kids the best interest.
That's right.
That seems to care too.
Yeah, seems to care.
Absolutely,
you have to be patient with all kids, but especially African American kids and some of these environments they come from. You know, it's just not necessary for that extra discipline to be applied to that on top of the stuff that they already got to deal with. So you know, shout out to you guys for that.
Yeah, man.
What we like to do is do some closing remarks where you guys just shout out, you know, your schools and what you're doing and how people can reach you and you know,
any positive message.
Yeah. First thing, I didn't forget, we have a community discussion. Saturday at New Beginnings. It's off West Michigan Street, right across from the Hallville Library at 2 o'clock. Miss Evans, the director there, has been gracious enough to open up the facility to families that go there and also families that are not. So if you're not doing anything Saturday and you have a child that will be going into kindergarten or first grade, or know of a family member or friend that will be going into kindergarten or first grade, it won't be an opportunity for me to talk to. It'll be an opportunity for us to talk with and together as I share certain elements of the school, and it's an opportunity to eat food, break bread, and ask questions. The other piece I would say is positive action. So we can't, and I think I speak accurately for Robert, we can't do this work on our own, right, to build a school. So if you're sitting there and anything has resonated with you this evening, or if you just have more questions, our Facebook page at Allegiant Prep, our Instagram page at Allegiant Prep. Friend us, like us, share it, pass the content. Our website is up there, allegiantprep.org. So that's one. Two, we need help. So if you want to come out and volunteer, we're canvassing on the 28th, the last Saturday of the month at 3 o'clock on the west side. We'll probably meet at the Hallville Library. So our website, randerson@allegiantprep.org is my email. We'll have different events. The last piece, I have to use this point of privilege because I would be remiss. A lot of times, strong, beautiful black women, as you know, are the backbone of families, communities, the society, and a lot of times others are put in front, and you see them, but you don't see that. I have been happily married for 2 years, and today is our anniversary. So I want to give a shout out to my wife, Sequoia Anderson, who has birthed my beautiful daughter, and also been patient, flexible, and also pushed me while supporting me during the course of the last 2 years, and will continue to push me forward. So thank you.
Very good. For Vanguard Collegiate of Indianapolis, we are actually in the authorization process, and so there are a couple things that you can do if you're listening to support us. You can visit the Indiana Charter School Board's website. It's in.gov/ICSB, and take a look at our application, review it. If you really like and support what we're doing, please send a short email to the Indiana Charter School Board at charter-application@icsb.in.gov. Again, that's charter-applications@icsb.in.gov to show us some support and some love. If you don't have time to send the email, but you happen to be available on Monday, October 30th, if you go to the State Charter School Board's website, the public hearing for our school, the information is posted there. We'd love for you to come out, even if you don't want to speak publicly, and just come and show your support and be in the building to let us know that you care and that you support us. And the last thing is Hallville, we're coming to you. We'll be canvassing in your neighborhood tomorrow. We'll be there Thursday. We'll be there Saturday morning. We'll be there next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the following Saturday.
Just every day. That's awesome.
So we're going to be there in your neighborhood. So, at least open up the door with a smile.
Sure. And the beauty of this is that y'all doing two different age groups, and y'all are both necessary.
Yes.
So 5th through 8th grade, K through
8th grade, ultimately.
K through 8th grade. Yeah. Come on, man.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? We need more. We need more schools like this.
So last thing, visit us at V as in Vanguard, C as in Collegiate, INDY.org. Get some more information about the school and our plans for our scholars.
Awesome.
Yep.
Right.
Indeed.
As I'm sitting here listening to everything from the strategies, everything that you two are saying, I can say as an educator that these are all the things that I've said and my colleagues have said that this is what schools need. This is what we need. This is what we're missing. So it excites me to hear you say all those, like you literally just touched on everything that I've had in my mind as far as what would make me great as a teacher and what would make my students better, with having those support systems. So it excites me to know that somebody's actually thinking ahead, somebody's actually putting something in place that that we've needed. So it really, I'm really excited about that. I support you 1,000%.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to when you can expand. And then you can give me a call, and then, make things so great for me. And I say, oh wow, I've arrived. So but there's a lot of teachers that want to be in places that you are about to establish.
Yep.
So you're gonna have some happy teachers. And happy teachers, like they say, what is it? Happy wife makes a happy life.
Yes.
Happy teacher. I'm not going to finish the cliche because I just thought about this, but a happy teacher, I guess, makes a happy classroom,
happy school,
happy student, and a happy school. That's right.
So, one more thing.
And I'd be remiss again. I got so hyped about the anniversary shout out, and I was like, I'm gonna go home and get a high five and a hug. We're gonna be posting for our founding team. So October 30th, you can go to www.allegiantprep.org, and you'll see job descriptions there, founding teachers, founding sped, office manager, operations manager. It'll be also on our Facebook page and Instagram. So please, we spread the word to the village. So if there's individuals that are inspired by a challenge and inspired by uncertainty in order to build something that will be a school of excellence for families and students, then please apply. If you're like, nah, it just sounds like too much hard work, I respect you, I love you, but I would say don't apply because it is going to take hard work to build something that doesn't
a lot of
exist.
sweat equity, baby.
Yeah.
That's me, because I might have to slap a kid.
Stick to technical right.
I might become Mr. Jones. I hate stupid kids. No way.
Hey man, look, I'll be short, man. I salute you, brothers, man. I mean, it's good, man, to see people that I've known when I was a knucklehead in high school. You guys are doing beautiful things, man, and you're going to impact so many kids.
Yes, you are.
So many kids, so many parents, so many teachers, because leadership is important. So by you guys leading, just leading by example. I mean, your teachers and the whole staff is going to follow suit. Hopefully, man, and we'll do what we can to help out, man.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
appreciate that, man.
And shout out to the viewers, man.
Definitely.
Thank
support these two brothers, man. They're doing great things.
Absolutely. We're gonna have Patrick head us out with the East Side High anthem.
Nobody in here knows the song from LA, do
I don't.
Pep rallies?
No, that's race.
That's not my part.
Did you picture the guy with the curl?
Oh, man, he was jamming, boy. That was
and then when the big dude, when he said that yeah part, and he was like,
oh yeah.
He did a neck curl.
Oh my goodness.
Oh man.
We gonna close out with that. Thank all the viewers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for our rendition of Eastside High anthem. It's all good. We appreciate y'all tuning in.
Sam.
These brothers, man, I'm just proud of y'all, man. I'm proud to know that there's people out there becoming a part of the solution.
Yeah.
You know, we can talk all day long about building schools to help kids and get them out of this environment. You guys have moved in the environment, and you're building up schools, and you're actually like putting it into action. And who doesn't want to support that? Like seriously, like we really need to get behind y'all and keep doing what we do. So, in 3 months. 3 or 4 months, we're gonna follow up again, bring y'all in here, and we're gonna keep pushing this all year long because school opens 2018.
July 2018.
July 2018.
July 29th is the first day for students.
It's go time, so we're gonna try and do everything we can to keep supporting y'all, man. So keep going, and we'll holler at y'all soon.
Appreciate it.
Peace.
Thanks to the viewers. Peace.